The marketplace was loud, filled with the scent of oil, sweat, and desperation. It wasn't a place for kindness. It was a place where the weak were sold to the highest bidder. A young alien woman stood on the auction platform, her wrists chained together, her body covered in bruises. Her silver-gray skin was dull from exhaustion, and her violet eyes stared blankly at the crowd. She had learned long ago that hope was useless. She was nothing more than an object here. The auctioneer, a thick-bodied reptilian alien, slammed his staff on the platform. "This one is strong, healthy enough to work. Starting bid, 500 credits. Laughter rippled through the crowd. "She doesn't even look strong enough to lift a bucket," one alien sneered. 300 credits. "That's the most she's worth," another bidder chuckled. The auctioneer's eyes darted around. He needed to sell her quickly. The slavers didn't waste food on those who couldn't bring a high price. Then, a voice spoke from the back. 1,000 credits. Silence fell over the crowd. Heads turned. A human stepped forward. Humans were rare in this part of the galaxy. They were seen as unpredictable, dangerous even. But this one was calm. He had short, dark hair, rough clothes, and a serious expression. His eyes didn't hold cruelty, only determination. The auctioneer blinked, then recovered. 1,000. Do I hear more? No one spoke. No one wanted to challenge a human for something so worthless. "Sold," the auctioneer said, slamming his staff down. The slavers shoved the girl forward. She stumbled but did not resist. The human caught her before she fell. She flinched. She was used to rough hands, not gentle ones. "You belong to me now," the human said, his voice calm. She nodded dully. Of course. She had been sold. That was how it worked. But then he did something strange. He took out a small tool, pressed it against her wrist, and with a soft beep, her chains unlocked. She stared at him in shock. Slaves were never unchained. "You're free now," he said. Her mind couldn't understand the words. She had been a slave all her life. Freedom was just a story. Her lips parted, but no words came out. The human sighed. "Come on. Let's get out of here before someone changes their mind." He turned and walked away. After a moment, she followed. Not because she had to, but because, for the first time, she had a choice, and she didn't know what to do with it. The alien girl followed the human through the crowded marketplace. Her bare feet moved on the rough ground, but she barely felt it. Her mind was still stuck on what had just happened. Her chains were gone. She lifted her wrists, staring at them, as if expecting the cold metal to return. But they didn't. She was free? No, that couldn't be true. She was still a slave, wasn't she? The human walked ahead, his steps confident. He did not turn to check if she was following. He did not drag her by the arm. He just walked. She hesitated. If she ran now, would he chase her? Would he punish her? That's what slavers did. But he had removed her chains. He had called her free. Her heart pounded. She had nowhere to go. No home. No family. If she ran, she would end up back in chains, or worse. She clenched her fists and hurried after him. They reached the edge of the marketplace, where a small metal ship was parked. It wasn't big or fancy, just enough for one person. He pressed a button on his wrist device, and the ship's ramp lowered with a soft hiss. "Go inside," he said. She hesitated. This was a trap. It had to be. The human sighed. "You don't trust me." She did not answer. He didn't force her. Instead, he stepped onto the ship first, leaving the door open. "Come in when you're ready," he said, disappearing inside. She stood there, confused. If this was a trick, it was a strange one. But the marketplace was dangerous, and she had no other choice. Slowly, she stepped inside. The ship was small but clean. A bed, a table, a few shelves. She had never been inside something so normal. No cages, no chains, no guards. The human sat at the table, pouring water into a small cup. He placed it in front of her. "Drink." She eyed the cup. No one ever gave her anything for free. "Not poisoned," he said, amused. Still, she hesitated. Then, carefully, she lifted the cup and drank. The cool water slid down her throat, soothing the dryness. It was the best thing she had tasted in years. "What is your name?" the human asked. She froze. Slaves did not have names. Slaves were given numbers. She had forgotten what her real name was a long time ago. The human saw her hesitation and sighed. "All right. No rush. Just rest for now." She blinked at him. "No orders? No threats." The human stood and walked toward the pilot's seat. "I'm taking off soon. You can stay if you want. If not, the door's open." She looked at the open ship door. A choice. For the first time in her life, she had a choice, and she didn't know what to do with it. The ship's engine hummed softly as the human sat in the pilot's seat, flipping switches. The alien girl remained near the doorway, staring at the open ramp. She could still leave. Her legs felt frozen. For years, she had dreamed of running away, of escaping the chains. But now, with freedom right in front of her, she couldn't move. Why? She clenched her fists. Maybe because she didn't know where to go. Maybe because she didn't know what freedom even meant. The human glanced at her. "You don't have to stand there forever." She flinched, expecting a command. But his voice wasn't harsh. He was just talking. Slowly, she stepped inside, and the ship's ramp closed behind her. The human didn't react, as if he had expected her to stay. He pressed a few buttons, and the ship lifted off. Through the window, the dirty marketplace shrank below them. Her prison was gone. She swallowed hard, her throat tight. The human stood and gestured to a small seat near the table. "Sit." She hesitated, then obeyed. He placed a plate of food in front of her. Bread, some fruit. Nothing fancy, but real food. She stared at it. "I know what you're thinking," the human said. "No, it's not a trick. Just eat." She picked up the bread slowly, expecting him to snatch it away at any moment. When he didn't, she took a small bite. It was soft, fresh, warm. Her hands trembled. She had eaten scraps before. Rotten food. Leftovers thrown to slaves like animals. But this was different. This was given. She ate in silence, her mind racing. The human sat across from her, watching with quiet patience. He wasn't like the others. He didn't demand anything from her, didn't expect anything. "Why?" Finally, she spoke. "Why did you buy me?" The human leaned back, thinking. Because no one else was going to. That answer made no sense. Slaves cost money. "What do you want from me?" His eyes met hers, serious but calm. "Nothing." She didn't believe him. No one gave without expecting something in return. Seeing her doubt, the human sighed. "Look, I didn't buy you to own you. I bought you because no one deserves to be treated like that." She gripped the edge of the table. Her whole life, she had been nothing, less than nothing. But now this human was saying she deserved more. She didn't know whether to feel grateful or angry. He stood and stretched. "Get some rest. There's a spare bed in the back." She didn't move. He walked toward the cockpit. "Sleep if you want. Stay awake if you want. It's up to you." Another choice. For the first time in her life, she was the one deciding. She had no idea what to do next. The ship drifted silently through space, its engines humming steadily. The alien girl sat in the small cabin, looking out of the window at the stars. They were distant, cold, and beautiful, but they didn't seem real to her. They felt too far away, like everything else in her life had always been. The bed in the back was still unused. She hadn't gone near it. How could she sleep? She had never had a safe place to sleep. She had only known fear. Fear of the slavers. Fear of punishment. Fear of waking up to another day of pain. The human's words echoed in her mind. "You're free now." She wasn't sure what freedom meant. She had no idea what she was supposed to do with it. After a while, she stood up and walked toward the cockpit, her feet silent on the floor. The human was sitting at the controls, staring at the star map. He didn't look up when she entered, but he didn't tell her to leave either. "How long until we reach somewhere safe?" she asked quietly. The human turned to her, giving her a small smile. "We'll be in a secure area in a few hours. Don't worry." She nodded, but the worry was still there. She had never known safety, and part of her didn't believe it could exist for her. The silence stretched between them for a moment, and then the human spoke again, his tone calm but firm. "I know this is strange for you, but I need you to trust me." She flinched, instinctively pulling away. Trust. She had never trusted anyone in her life. The slavers had broken her trust long ago. The human seemed to notice her reaction, but he didn't get angry. Instead, he simply leaned back in his seat, arms crossed. "You don't have to trust me yet, but if you want to be free, you have to start somewhere. And that starts with not running away from the only person who hasn't hurt you." His words hit her harder than she expected. She had been ready to leave, to run, to hide. But what if he was right? What if the only chance at freedom was to trust someone who had given her nothing but kindness? She sat down across from him, still unsure. "Why?" He raised an eyebrow, his gaze serious. "Why what? Why are you helping me?" The human sighed, leaning forward slightly. "Because you deserve better. Because no one should live like you did." She stared at him, her heart pounding. No one had ever said that to her before. The slavers had always treated her as less than an animal. But this human, he saw something in her that no one else did. She didn't know what to say, so she remained silent. But for the first time, she felt a tiny spark of something. Maybe she could trust him. After a long pause, the human stood up. "Get some rest. You'll need your strength." She watched him leave the cockpit and walk toward the back of the ship. She wanted to ask him questions, wanted to know more about why he was doing this for her, but something inside her told her that she needed to stop questioning him for a moment. She needed to believe that this was real. And maybe, just maybe, she could start trusting him. The days passed slowly aboard the ship. The human took care of everything, handling the controls, preparing meals, and ensuring the ship's safety. The alien girl spent most of her time staring out of the window at the endless stretch of stars, her mind racing. She wasn't used to being treated like this. She wasn't used to kindness. At first, she had expected him to ask for something in return, but he never did. He simply went about his business as though her freedom was a normal thing, as though she were just another person, not a piece of property. And for a brief moment, she almost allowed herself to believe that she could live like this forever. But fear always held her back. One morning, as they docked at a nearby planet for supplies, the human turned to her with a serious expression. "We need to stay low while we're here," he said. "I don't want anyone to know about you." She nodded, understanding. Though she had been free of the chains, the fear of being caught never left her. It gnawed at her, always lurking just beneath the surface. The marketplace on the planet was busy, filled with various species going about their business. But the alien girl kept her head down, hiding behind the human. The slavers were everywhere, and if they saw her, there was no telling what they would do. The human seemed to sense her unease. He glanced back at her and smiled. "It's okay. Just stay close, and we'll be fine." She tried to believe him, but every part of her screamed to run. She wanted to disappear into the crowd, to flee before anyone recognized her, but something inside her stopped her from moving. For the first time in her life, she wanted to trust someone. They walked through the marketplace, picking up food and supplies. The human didn't draw attention to her, as though they were just another pair of shoppers. But she noticed the glances they received from the other aliens, the whispers as they passed by. She kept her eyes on the ground, praying no one would see her. But then, as they passed a corner, A group of aliens stepped into their path. One of them, a tall reptilian creature with sharp eyes, looked straight at her and sneered. "What's this?" "A runaway." The human immediately stepped in front of her, his body tensing. "No," he said firmly. "She's with me." The reptilian alien raised an eyebrow, clearly sizing him up. "What's she worth then? A slave like that's worth a good price." The human didn't flinch. He stood tall and looked the alien in the eyes. "She's not for sale." "And neither am I." The alien sneered again but said nothing more. With a wave of his hand, he stepped aside, allowing them to pass. As they continued walking, the alien girl's heart was racing. Her body was still tense, her mind replaying the moment over and over again. But the human hadn't flinched. He hadn't let them take her. When they were out of earshot, the human turned to her, his expression soft. "You're safe. I won't let anyone take you." The alien girl's breath caught in her throat. She had never been protected before. Not like this. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel something other than fear. Trust. The days on the ship had become routine. The human, who had introduced himself as Mark, handled everything, from navigating the ship to fixing small issues that came up. He was kind, always offering her food, space, and freedom. Yet, she still couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. The alien girl, whose name she couldn't even remember, had spent most of her life in fear. Fear of being sold. Fear of being hurt. The memories of her past were a haze of pain, cruelty, and dark corners. She tried to trust Mark, but the shadows of her past always crept in. She remembered the slavers' harsh words, their cruel eyes, and how they had treated her as nothing more than a piece of meat to be bought and sold. One night, as the ship drifted through the endless expanse of space, she found herself unable to sleep. The small cabin felt cold despite the warmth of the blanket she wrapped herself in. The human, Mark, was in the cockpit, monitoring their path. She stood at the door of the cabin, debating whether to approach him. But every time she considered it, the old fear gripped her heart. What if he wanted something from her? What if he was like the others? She hated herself for feeling that way. With a deep breath, she walked towards the cockpit, her feet silent on the metal floor. Mark was sitting in his seat, looking over the star maps, but he turned when he heard her approach. "Can't sleep?" he asked gently. She shook her head. I don't know what to do," she confessed, her voice soft. "I don't know who I am without the chains." Mark was silent for a moment, studying her with a thoughtful expression. "You're more than what they made you believe you were," he said. "You're not your past. You're who you choose to be now." His words didn't quite sink in. She had never been given a choice before. It had always been someone else making decisions for her, telling her where to go and what to do. She had always been a slave. "But," she started, her voice trembling, "I don't know what I'm supposed to do now." Mark smiled slightly, his eyes soft. "You don't have to know right now. Just take it one step at a time. You're not alone anymore." The girl felt a pang of warmth in her chest, but she quickly pushed it away. She wasn't used to kindness. It was dangerous. It made her vulnerable. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Why are you helping me?" Mark leaned back in his chair and sighed. "Because you deserve better. No one should ever have to live in fear." She clenched her fists, unsure of how to react. For a moment, she just stood there, trying to understand. The human seemed to sense her struggle and stood up, walking over to her. He didn't touch her, didn't invade her space, but his presence was calm, steady. "I know you're scared," Mark said softly. "You've been through a lot, but that's all in the past now. What happens next is up to you." Her heart raced. What did that mean? Was she truly free? Could she choose? The silence stretched between them, heavy with questions and fears. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if I make the wrong choice?" Mark looked at her with a gentle, understanding smile. "Then we'll fix it together." For the first time, she let herself believe him. The ship continued its journey through the stars, but the peace that had settled between the human and the alien girl was fragile. She had started to relax, to trust, but deep down, she knew that the past wasn't so easily left behind. One evening, as they landed on a quiet planet to gather supplies, Mark was unusually tense. His eyes darted around, watching the crowds at the marketplace. "What's wrong?" the alien girl asked, sensing his unease. He paused for a moment, then leaned in close. "I've heard rumors. The slavers have been looking for you. They know someone bought you, and they want you back. We need to be careful." Her heart skipped a beat. She had been expecting this, but hearing it out loud made it real. Her past was catching up to her. Mark looked at her, his expression firm. "We'll get what we need quickly and leave. No one will know you're here." But as they moved through the market, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The crowd seemed too large, the air too still. Every glance felt like it was aimed directly at her. Mark was focused, his attention never leaving the people around them. The alien girl tried to keep up, but fear clung to her like a second skin. They passed a corner, and that's when she saw them. A group of slavers, rough-looking aliens who wore dark, intimidating armor. They were standing in a tight circle, talking amongst themselves, and then one of them turned and locked eyes with her. The alien girl froze. "Get down," Mark hissed, pulling her into an alleyway before they could be spotted. They pressed themselves against the cold metal wall, hidden from view, but her heart raced in her chest. Her hands shook. The slavers were close. They were here. Mark placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice low and urgent. "Stay quiet. We're going to move through the back streets and get back to the ship. Don't make a sound." The alien girl nodded, though she could barely breathe. She had never been good at staying calm. The slavers had always found her before. They moved quickly, blending into the shadows of the alleyways. Every step felt like it was echoing through the still air. She could hear the distant voices of the slavers, getting closer. Her mind raced. If they were caught, she knew what would happen. She would be returned to the slavers, and Mark would be left helpless. She couldn't let that happen. Mark's grip on her arm tightened as they rounded a corner, and she saw the ship in the distance, just beyond the last row of buildings. Freedom was so close. But then, the sound of footsteps behind them stopped them dead in their tracks. "Not so fast," a voice growled. The alien girl turned, her heart sinking as she saw the slaver from before, standing in front of them. His cold eyes locked onto hers. Mark stepped in front of her, his stance defensive. "Stay back," he warned, his voice calm but filled with authority. The slaver grinned. "She's mine. You can't protect her forever, human." The alien girl's breath caught in her throat. There was no way out. The slavers had found them. And this time, she wasn't sure they could escape. The slaver's grin spread wider as he advanced, his footsteps heavy on the ground. The alien girl's heart hammered in her chest, and she took a hesitant step back, almost as if her body was moving without her consent. Mark stood between her and the slaver, his posture steady and unyielding. His eyes were calm, but his grip on the weapon at his side was tight. "Stay behind me," Mark said softly, though his voice was sharp. The alien girl barely nodded, still too scared to move. Her mind raced. She couldn't go back to them. She couldn't be chained again. The slaver took another step forward, his eyes narrowing. "You think you can stop me, human? She's worth more than your life." Mark didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. "I'm not interested in money, but you're going to leave her alone." The slaver laughed darkly. "You're brave for a human, but it won't matter. We'll take her back, and you'll be nothing but a memory." Mark's fingers tightened on the weapon. The alien girl watched in silence, unable to do anything but breathe, her whole body shaking. But then a thought sparked in her mind, a thought she had never allowed herself to believe. She wasn't helpless anymore. Without thinking, she stepped forward, standing beside Mark. Her hands were shaking, but she wasn't afraid of what came next. The slaver's eyes flicked to her for a moment, confusion flashing across his face. "What are you doing?" he sneered. The alien girl's voice was low but steady. "I'm not going with you. I'm not your property." The slaver's face twisted with anger. "You think you have a choice." He lunged forward, reaching for her. But Mark was faster. In a single motion, he drew his weapon and fired. The slaver's eyes widened in shock as he was knocked back, his arm dangling uselessly at his side. The other slavers behind him froze, eyes wide with disbelief. Mark's voice was cool. "I said, stay away from her." The alien girl watched as the slavers recoiled, fear flickering in their eyes. This wasn't the kind of response they were used to. They were used to people cowering, begging. But Mark wasn't afraid. The alien girl didn't know what to say. For so long, she had lived as though the slavers were the ones with all the power. But here, now, with Mark standing beside her, she realized how wrong she had been. The slaver who had been advancing on them now took a step back, his face filled with anger and fear. "This isn't over," he growled. "You can't hide forever." Mark didn't respond. He only glanced at the alien girl and nodded toward the ship. "Let's go." She hesitated for a moment, her body frozen in place. The slaver's words still echoed in her mind. But Mark was right. This wasn't over. It was only just beginning. Finally, the alien girl took a deep breath and walked with him. With every step, the fear seemed to lessen. She wasn't just a slave anymore. She was free. As they reached the ship, Mark didn't look back. But she knew, deep down, they had just taken the first real step toward freedom. And for the first time in her life, she was going to fight for it. The ship was quiet as it ascended into the sky, leaving the planet's surface behind. The alien girl sat by the window, her eyes locked on the receding landscape. Her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, but one question stood out above the rest. Who was she now? For so long, she had been nothing. A slave, a piece of property, a thing to be traded. She had never known freedom, never known choice. But now, for the first time in her life, she was free. The silence in the ship was broken by Mark's voice, calm and steady. "We're safe for now, but we'll need to stay off the grid until we're sure the slavers won't track us." She nodded, her thoughts drifting back to the slavers they had just escaped. The fear of being caught still hung over her, but there was something else now, a strange sense of pride. They had stood up to them. They had fought back. Mark was at the controls, navigating the ship through the stars. He had never shown fear, not once. She had seen the way he faced down the slavers, the way he protected her without hesitation. He wasn't like anyone she had ever known. "Thank you," she said quietly. Mark didn't look at her, but his lips twitched in the slightest smile. "You don't have to thank me. I didn't do it for thanks." She hesitated before speaking again. "But why did you do it? Why help me?" Mark's eyes flicked to hers briefly before returning to the controls. "Because you deserve better than what they gave you. You're not just a thing. You're a person, and you deserve a life." Her chest tightened at his words. No one had ever told her that before. She had always been someone's possession, someone's tool. To be seen as a person, it was overwhelming. "I've never had a life," she whispered. Mark's voice softened. "Well, now you do. And you get to decide what you do with it." The weight of those words sank deep into her. She could choose. For so long, she had been told who she was, what she could be. Her existence had been defined by others. But now, for the first time, she could choose. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. She looked out of the window again, watching as the stars stretched out before them. There was so much she didn't know, so much she had never been allowed to see. But now she had the freedom to explore, to learn, to live. A quiet determination settled in her chest. She wasn't just going to hide anymore. She wasn't going to be afraid of the past catching up to her. She had Mark's help, But more than that, she had herself. "I don't know what comes next," she said, her voice steady. "But I'm not going back." Mark smiled at her words. "Good, because you're not alone anymore." The alien girl nodded, feeling a small spark of hope flicker in her chest. The journey ahead would be difficult. The slavers wouldn't stop looking for her. But for the first time, she wasn't running from her past. She was moving forward, toward something she had never known. A future. The days stretched into weeks as the ship traveled through the stars. The alien girl had started to adjust to her new life, though the fear still lingered. It was always there, hiding just beneath the surface. But with each passing day, it became a little quieter. Mark had kept his promise. He had given her space, but he also kept a steady presence. He never pushed her to do anything she wasn't ready for, and he never treated her like she was fragile. He simply treated her like a person, and that was more than she had ever hoped for. One evening, as the sun set on the distant planet they had landed on, the alien girl sat outside, feeling the cool air on her skin. The stars were brighter here, more distant, and it made her think of everything she had never experienced. Everything that had been taken from her. She had never known freedom, not really. But now, as she watched the stars, she realized that this was the first time she truly felt free. Mark appeared beside her, sitting down without a word. He didn't need to speak. His presence was enough. For a long time, neither of them said anything. The quiet was comfortable, but eventually, the alien girl broke it. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked, her voice soft. Mark looked at her, his expression calm but serious. "Regret what?" "Buying me. Helping me." He smiled, though it was faint. "No, I never regret doing what's right." She nodded slowly, unsure of how to respond. She didn't know if she deserved what he had given her. She didn't know if she deserved anything at all. "But," she began, her voice hesitating, "what if I'm not strong enough? What if the slavers find us again? I can't keep running." Mark looked at her with understanding in his eyes. "You don't have to run anymore, and you don't have to do it alone." His words settled around her like a blanket. The weight of her past was still heavy, but the idea that she didn't have to carry it by herself was comforting. She looked up at the stars again, her heart lighter than it had ever been. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she felt like she could face it. "What do I do now?" she asked, her voice quiet. Mark was silent for a moment before he answered. "You live. You make your own choices, and you take it one step at a time." She thought about that for a long time, her eyes still on the stars. It wasn't a perfect solution. It wasn't a promise that everything would be easy. But it was hers. She had the freedom to make her own decisions, to shape her future the way she wanted. And that was enough. The alien girl finally stood, her heart filled with a new sense of purpose. "I'm not afraid anymore," she said, her voice steady. Mark watched her with a proud smile. "You've always been stronger than you knew." She turned to him, her expression determined. "I'll never be anyone's property again. I'll make sure of it." With that, she stepped forward, ready to face whatever the future held, knowing that the journey ahead was hers to define. For the first time in her life, she was truly free. And this time, she wouldn't let anyone take it away.